Imagine discovering a car that had almost everything enthusiasts dream about. It had a naturally aspirated six-cylinder engine with one of the most unique exhaust notes ever created. It featured sophisticated suspension, sharp steering, an innovative active rear spoiler that automatically deployed at speed, and styling that still looks purposeful decades later. Automotive journalists praised the way it drove. Owners refused to sell theirs. Today, the few surviving examples are becoming increasingly valuable. You would probably assume we're talking about a Porsche. Or perhaps a limited production BMW. But we're not. This was a Volkswagen. And that might be the most surprising part of the entire story. Because the Corrado wasn't built to be just another sporty hatchback. Volkswagen wanted something far more ambitious. They wanted to prove they could build a true driver's car, one capable of competing with much more expensive European sports coupes while still carrying the same badge found on millions of ordinary family cars. It was an incredibly bold idea. During the late 1980s, Volkswagen was known around the world for practical, reliable, and affordable transportation. The Golf had become one of Europe's biggest success stories, and the GTI had already created the hot hatch revolution. But neither of those cars occupied the same territory as machines from Porsche, BMW, or Alfa Romeo. Volkswagen wanted to change that. The project that became the Corrado wasn't designed to replace the Golf. It wasn't meant to be another practical family hatchback. Instead, it was conceived as a premium sports coupe that would showcase everything Volkswagen engineers were capable of when cost became a secondary priority. The company envisioned a car that would combine everyday usability with genuine performance, advanced technology, and a level of refinement rarely associated with the Volkswagen badge. To make that vision a reality, Volkswagen partnered with Karmann, the famous German coach builder responsible for manufacturing some of Europe's most interesting specialty cars. Unlike high-volume production Golfs rolling off Volkswagen's main assembly lines, every Corrado required a more complex manufacturing process. Building the car this way dramatically increased production costs, but Volkswagen believed the final product would justify the expense. And in many ways, it did. When the Corrado debuted in 1988, it immediately stood apart from almost everything else on the road. Its proportions were low and athletic, the body lines were clean without being extravagant, and hidden within the design was one of the most unusual features ever fitted to a production Volkswagen, an automatically deploying rear spoiler. At around 120 km per hour, the spoiler would rise by itself to improve high-speed stability before retracting again as speed decreased. It wasn't included simply to impress buyers. It genuinely improved aerodynamic performance at a time when active aerodynamics were still rare outside the world of exotic supercars. Yet despite all of that engineering, Volkswagen still hadn't created the car that enthusiasts would eventually remember. The early Corrado models were good, but they weren't extraordinary. The truly defining moment came a few years later, when Volkswagen introduced an engine unlike anything else in the industry. An engine so unusual that, even today, it remains one of the most fascinating pieces of engineering ever to wear a Volkswagen badge. It was called the VR6. And it would transform the Corrado from an interesting sports coupe into one of the greatest hidden gems Germany has ever produced. When Volkswagen unveiled the Corrado VR6 in 1991, the entire personality of the car changed. The original supercharged G60 version had already shown promise, but the new engine elevated the Corrado into an entirely different league. At first glance, the letters VR6 didn't seem particularly remarkable. Most people assumed it was simply another V6. In reality, it was unlike almost anything the automotive industry had ever seen. Instead of using the wide cylinder banks found in conventional V6 engines, Volkswagen engineers designed an incredibly narrow-angle six-cylinder with just a 15-degree bank angle. The cylinders shared a single-cylinder head, creating an engine that was almost as compact as a four-cylinder while delivering the smoothness, torque, and unmistakable sound of an inline-six. Personally, I think the VR6 remains one of the most brilliant engineering solutions Volkswagen has ever created. It solved a problem that many manufacturers considered impossible. A traditional inline-six was too long to fit transversely into a compact front-wheel drive platform. A conventional V6 was wider, heavier, and significantly more expensive to package. The VR6 found an elegant compromise that allowed Volkswagen to install six-cylinder performance into cars that had never been designed to accommodate it. Suddenly, the Corrado possessed something none of its direct competitors could offer. The 2.9-liter VR6 produced around 190 horsepower in European specification, but the numbers only told part of the story. What truly impressed drivers was the way the engine delivered its power. Unlike many turbocharged performance cars of the era, there was no waiting for boost to arrive. Throttle response was immediate, torque was available throughout the rev range, and the engine's deep, mechanical growl became one of the most distinctive sounds of the 1990s. Every press of the accelerator reminded the driver that this wasn't just another sporty hatchback in disguise. It felt mature, refined, and effortlessly fast. Performance reflected that character. Reaching 100 km per hour in well under 7 seconds and capable of speeds approaching 235 km per hour, the Corrado VR6 competed with cars carrying far more prestigious badges. Yet it remained practical enough to drive every day. Visibility was excellent, the hatchback design provided useful cargo space, and overall refinement exceeded what many people expected from a Volkswagen. It was the kind of car that could comfortably commute during the week and confidently attack mountain roads on the weekend. The chassis deserved just as much praise as the engine. Engineers carefully revised the suspension to cope with the additional weight and performance of the VR6, creating a balance that felt secure without becoming dull. Steering remained direct and communicative, body control inspired confidence, and high-speed stability benefited not only from careful suspension tuning but also from the active rear spoiler. As speeds increased, the spoiler automatically rose from the rear deck lid, generating additional downforce exactly when it was needed most. Today, active aerodynamics have become common on modern performance cars. Back then, seeing part of your Volkswagen move automatically at highway speeds felt almost futuristic. Automotive journalists noticed immediately. Reviews consistently praised the Corrado's composure, refinement, and engineering sophistication. Many described it as one of the finest front-wheel drive performance cars ever built. Some even argued that it drove with a level of maturity usually associated with cars costing considerably more. Yet despite the overwhelmingly positive reviews, something unexpected happened. Customers simply weren't buying enough of them. The problem wasn't the car. It was the price. Because of its complex engineering, low-volume production at Karmann, premium materials, and advanced technology, the Corrado became one of the most expensive Volkswagens ever offered. Buyers walked into dealerships expecting Volkswagen prices and instead found a coupe that cost dangerously close to entry-level models from BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and even Porsche. For many customers, the badge on the hood simply didn't justify the asking price, no matter how exceptional the engineering underneath truly was. And that would become the greatest tragedy of the Corrado. It wasn't defeated by poor design, unreliable engineering, or disappointing performance. It was defeated by perception. The Volkswagen Corrado VR6 never became the sales success its engineers had hoped for. Production ended in 1995 after fewer than 100,000 Corrados of all versions had been built, making it one of Volkswagen's rarest modern performance cars. On paper, the project looked like a disappointment. It was expensive to develop, expensive to build, and too expensive for many of the people who walked into Volkswagen showrooms. But history has a fascinating way of correcting mistakes that the market makes. Personally, I think the Corrado wasn't a failure because it was a bad car. It failed because it carried the wrong badge at the wrong time. Had the exact same car worn a Porsche Crest or a BMW Roundel, the story might have been completely different. Yet that never stopped enthusiasts from recognizing what Volkswagen had actually created. As the years passed, the Corrado's reputation only grew stronger. Drivers began to appreciate the brilliant balance of its chassis, the beautifully engineered VR6 engine, the subtle design that aged gracefully, and the confidence it inspired on every road. The active rear spoiler that once seemed like an unnecessary gimmick became an icon. The unmistakable sound of the VR6 became one of the most beloved engine notes of the 1990s. And the car that so many buyers overlooked quietly became one of the most desirable Volkswagens ever built. Today, finding an original, well-preserved Corrado VR6 is becoming increasingly difficult. Values continue to rise, collectors search for unmodified examples, and enthusiasts who were lucky enough to own one rarely want to let it go. That's usually the clearest sign that a car has become something far greater than a commercial product. It has become a legend. Looking back, the Corrado proved something that still feels relevant today. Great engineering doesn't always guarantee great sales. Sometimes the market isn't ready. Sometimes brand perception is stronger than the product itself. And sometimes the most extraordinary automobiles spend years hiding in plain sight before the world finally understands what they really were. The Volkswagen Corrado VR6 wasn't just Volkswagen's forgotten masterpiece. It was one of the greatest driver's cars Germany ever produced, and perhaps the finest performance car the company has ever quietly built.